Hi everyone. I hope you're having a really good week so far. It's a bit breezy and a bit blowy here in the UK. I don't know what it's like in your part of the world, wherever you're listening from. But today I'm just going to adjust my stand here because it feels a little bit wobbly. There we go. Anyway, wobbly is probably quite an apt word to be using because tonight I'm doing something a little bit different. This isn't about career or positive thinking as such. This is more about actually when you are in a role in an organisation, or whether you are setting up your own business or your business is growing or your organisation is growing, whether you've been you're working full time, you've been promoted, as I said, setting up your own business, or you want to take that next leap from manager to leader. Now, for me, manager is much more about managing activities, and leadership really involves those sort of grey areas of managing people and the delicacies involved in that. Hello, Methasit, hello, lovely to see you this evening. I'm just going to see if I can do a little wave back to you. Hello, I'm talking about leadership tonight, so it's good to have you here. So that jump from manager to leader, whereas a manager, quite often we're very focused on the tactical elements of our role, the tasks, the activities. Then what happens when we become a leader is all of a sudden we have to become a very fully rounded person who can inspire, motivate, listen, create empathy, be a little bit vulnerable at times, but really understand how to build relationships with other people. And sometimes it can feel as though, and I'm thinking back to my own career here, that feels like quite a big jump, because suddenly you realise that you might need new skills that you've not acquired, and those are sometimes what they're called softer skills. I'm not actually sure where the term softer skills came from. I really need to look it up, but actually those more I guess the areas where we need to build relationships. I know that in my career that I was very good at what I did and I loved it, my career in communications, and then I kept getting promoted. And I remember the first time I was given a completely new team and thinking, gosh, I'm not sure I know how to do this. I know that I got to this position in my career because I'm good at my job, I'm good at the tactics, I'm good at the activities. But what about all this other stuff, this relationship stuff, this managing people? I'm not really sure I'm cut out for this. So that was quite a scary jump. And I actually remember it being quite lonely. And it's interesting because I've got a video on YouTube, and that's all about the loneliness of jumping from managing tasks, to leadership, which is much more of a 360-degree role where you're responsible more for the health and well-being of your team. And it's a video about how that can feel quite lonely and daunting. And that's one of my highest watched videos on YouTube. It's amazing. It's just something I decided to write or film. And since I've done that, I've realised it is a really big topic. It is a really, really big topic in industry, about that jumping from managing tasks to then managing people and building those productive relationships with people that perhaps used to be your colleagues. I mean, that's quite a big task, really. And I think many of us, I don't know whether you're running your own business or whether you are in industry, in a charitable organisation, whether it's almost a community committee, it doesn't matter, because some of these principles are the same, that sometimes we can feel like an imposter. We can feel like, oh gosh, how did I get here? I'm not sure if I deserve to be here. I think it's a bit of a fluke, because as human beings, we want to protect ourselves sometimes, and we have that kind of primeval fight or flight syndrome. And sometimes we want to run away, or we freeze, or we're scared about this change that's coming towards us. And moving from a manager to a leader is a big step. I just really remember it the first time, and I'm not sure if anyone else does, but we can feel like, how did I get here? it must be an accident. And there's been surveys around people that have these doubts, have these thoughts, feel like a fraud, feel like an imposter. And that's something we need to really, really watch, because there's been some surveys done. It was actually, I think, the University of Salzburg in Austria. They surveyed 200 professionals and found out that those professionals who didn't kind of come to terms and deal with these feelings of being an imposter ended up being paid less, didn't continue to get promoted, and didn't feel as committed and happy in their work. So actually, we need to kind of deal with these feelings and fight, flight, freeze, whatever your response is to it. There's another F, but I'm not going to say it because it's probably a rude word that we don't want to be broadcast on Facebook. I'll get a slap wrist. But anyway, you know what I mean. That feeling of, I couldn't possibly have got here on my own merit. This is a fluke. It's not. It's because somebody's recognised you. Unless you've absolutely fibbed your way through your career, sort of ridden off the back of other people. And I don't think anyone that is listening to a Facebook Live or watching a Facebook Live or engages with my content, I don't believe anyone I know would do that. But we need to kind of stop those feelings from taking us over, because it will affect our career, and kind of reframe those thoughts to think, okay, I feel a bit scared, I feel a bit overwhelmed, this is something new for me. But kind of almost what I say is like, step into that fear. Let that fear be your friend. Let that fear be your fuel to drive you forward. Don't let that fear be the thing that freezes you where you are and affects your performance. So yes, recognise absolutely that perhaps you were a manager, perhaps you were a supervisor, and now going into a leadership role where you might feel like a bit of a fraud, where you've not had any leadership development or training, where you're suddenly managing new people and all the complexities of managing people and building relationships. It's, we have to realistically reframe that fear and think, how can I use this fear as fuel? How can I stop worrying about being perfect? And how can I learn? If I do make mistakes, that's okay. If I do make a mistake, how do I redress it? How do I learn from my mistakes? How can I step into this fear and really help it drive me forward? Face up to it and take some action, because as I quite often say to my clients, fear is fuel. Fear is fuel, and the thing that fear really hates is action. So if you just decide as a new leader to just do one thing different, to try something new, just one thing, that's a step forward, and that will quash some of the fears that you have. So if you are feeling like a bit of a fraud, don't. Unless you've completely fibbed your way through your career, which I'm sure you haven't. Make a list of your strengths. Have a look at your strengths. Realistically assess your strengths and think about, what am I good at? But also be honest about some of the areas that need development, and if you need development support to develop into that leadership role, which again is about letting go of some of the tactical elements, about building relationships, about dealing with the pressures of dealing with a team that might need you to support them. But also you've got pressure from above where they're saying, we want results. So you're kind of in the sandwich. So just be realistic with yourself and assess your skills. Have a look at perhaps some areas that need working on and ask for help. So many of us struggle. I know that I struggled. When I was first promoted into a leadership role, the notion of coaching wasn't very well known over here, and it wasn't regularly offered. So, make sure that you're being realistic with yourself. It's okay to make mistakes. We're all going to make mistakes. It's about how you deal with them that sets you up as a good leader or a particular leader with impact. Neutralize that chatter, neutralize the chatter that's going blah, 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 and replace that with some more helpful thoughts. As I've said, realistically assess your skills, look at your weaknesses, ask for help. When you're leading your team, don't make assumptions. Get to know your team. Maybe do some psychometric profiling. Understand them. what makes them tick, what drives them, how do they want to develop their careers. Spend time with your team understanding them. And that might feel tricky when it's like, I've got to go and deliver something really quickly, I've got to achieve something. Don't panic. Spend a bit of time getting to know your team, how they tick, how they work. That work is going to pay off in the long run. Involve them in setting goals, in setting the vision. It's not all on your shoulders today. I think the notion of, particularly in the organisations I've worked with, the thing that comes up a lot with the leaders that I coach and the organisations that I work with is that the management, the leadership team at the top, they want their new leaders to come up with ideas. They want them to have solutions. It's not always, we're going to tell you what to do. You have to do it. Yes, they may well set financial goals. They may well set your role profile and your direction of travel. But in this day and age, what I keep hearing from businesses is, I want my leaders to step up. So my question back to them is, and maybe it is to you, what does stepping up mean for you as a leader? So I've given you some ideas already and I'll recap those later. Some of the other areas that might be tricky, and I'm sharing these with you so you know you're not alone, because it's such a common phenomenon that new leaders need to have some support about how to deal with these tricky issues. As I mentioned briefly before, working with people that previously might have been your colleagues or on the same level as you, and now, that they are reporting into you. It's important to address that and understand how you're going to work together. Delivering bad news and performance managing. I think a lot of new leaders can shy away from that, and actually you're creating a rod for your own back. That doesn't mean going in there all guns blazing, but it does mean as a leader you have a responsibility to the organisation, your own business, for whatever organisation you're working for, to address those things, to look at performance, make sure it's happening in the right way. One of the things that I kind of realised after a while of leading was, actually, I don't need to know all the answers. And I thought as a leader, I need to know everything. I need to address things in a certain way and I need to know all the answers. Rubbish, you don't. What you need to do is actually involve your team. As I said, it's like less about, I don't know, just in my experience, less about, we're a company, we're going to tell our leaders what to do. They might set the parameters, but actually in this day and age, it's much more about, we want self-sufficiency solutions. We want our managers to step up because we're all so busy. So, not knowing all the answers is okay, because you can engage your team in finding solutions. When I was leading teams, I was a firm believer in employing people that were better than me in certain areas, who were, a lot cleverer than me in different areas, that were more qualified than I was. So, I firmly believe in doing all of that. So, the other thing that I have noticed as well, I don't know whether it still exists. I have seen it, and actually I've seen it in managers, leaders that have been in the same position for a long time, is that actually I need to be a jerk to be a leader, as in, I need to be really firm and directive and strict and like a school teacher. I'm not sure about you, but I don't think that really works in today's workplace. I don't know what the future holds, of course, but I think a lot of us are looking for not just a job. Some of us might be in that situation at times where it's like, I've just got to take a job for now because I've got some other pressures going on. But actually, in terms of our career and being happy in our work, I think a lot of the people that I certainly work with want to find a role that really suits them, an organisation that they really like. And I notice a lot of the younger people that I coach are asking themselves, well, what values does this organisation have? What's the culture? These are questions that maybe we wouldn't have asked ourselves like 30 years ago. It was a very different world, but people are asking those questions now, and that's great because we're living in a different world. So actually, as a leader and a manager, you want to have a good reputation of being, you might need to be firm, but being compassionate. Nobody wants to work with someone who's, beating with a stick all the time. I think even in times of tough change where things haven't gone as well, that ability as a leader to like confront that, to be vulnerable about it in a way, but also to be open about it, to be positive and constructive when something's not gone as well, somebody's not performing as well. I think that's absolutely the right way to go. You know, just because you're the boss doesn't mean you can be mean to people, even if they're not performing in the right way. So you need to make sure that you've got clear metrics as well. You know, what are your performance measures for you and your team? How do they all work together as a team? You know, and actually I firmly believe in team workshops, pulling those together as a team. I do tons of work around team conflict, reducing that conflict, improving communications, and very often it's like complete misunderstandings or miscommunications. And I think getting to work with your team about how do we achieve these goals together as a team is really, really important. And that's what I mean about these softer skills, that actually leadership can sometimes be a bit undefinable, but when you think about it, you know, if you think less task and more about relationships helping with the results, then maybe it will become clearer. Feedback, you know, we as leaders have to make sure we're giving feedback, and that can be feedback at regular one-to-ones, like one-to-one meetings with your team, performance reviews, however your company structures them, but you've got to get really comfortable about giving constructive evidence-based feedback. You cannot let poor performance continue to carry on. And actually, a lot of employees that I know want, you know, if they want to stay in a company and they're passionate about what they do, and they want to progress, they want feedback. They want to understand, well, what do you mean by that? It's no good saying, oh, you did a really great job. What was it about that job that was great? Where can I improve? It's a positive, giving feedback is a positive experience as well, and actually involve the employee in that, in terms of they should be able to have an opportunity to rate themselves, and understand if there's a disconnect there. So get really used to that, giving feedback. And, you know, by all means, when you're giving feedback or when you are conducting a performance review, ask questions, ask open questions, really, really listen, ask questions and make eye contact to the people that you're talking to. They're humans as well. You know, as I said, being a boss doesn't mean being a jerk. And I'd just like to welcome the other couple of people that have joined the live tonight. This is about loving the leap from manager to leader, with manager being much more about tasks, leadership much more about relationships, managing your team, but managing your superiors as well. Don't worry about the age of people in your team, whether they're older, younger, the same age as you. I just think, you know, it doesn't matter. You can be a great leader at any age. You know, I've worked with people who are young entrepreneurs, and they've just got that leadership. They command that respect. They have empathy. They listen. They ask questions. They're attentive. Their body language is good. They have learnt to let go of some of the tasks and empower their team to take those on. And they've learnt that actually I need to spend my time setting the vision for the organisation or the team, whether that's to the external marketplace with speaking at events, customers, suppliers, and internally. You know, you might start getting involved in internal workshops and events where you have to walk the walk and talk the talk. So, and I've seen leaders of all ages doing that. So it's great. You don't need to be a subject matter expert on everything. I mean, a lot of the impact we make with people is done within the first, 8.7 seconds, something ridiculous like that. So it's less about what we say. It's more about how we present ourselves to the world, of our body language, our impact. So making sure you can identify your impact and how to improve it is critical. Just making sure I've got all my points here. You know, I think as well, sometimes there will be times of change, and learning how to feel comfortable addressing bad news, confronting bad news is really important. A lot of my background is in communications, and certainly that's something I've had to coach a lot of leaders and managers on, is around how you communicate news during, when it's not so good, or when you've had to let somebody go, or when you've had to restructure people. And you have to give that opportunity to be open and consultative with your colleagues, and even if it is laying people off, sort of having that compassion around it and thinking, well, if this was me, how would I want this situation to be dealt with, and just trying to do it in the most professional, compassionate way that you can. It's tough. It is tough when you have to do those things, but unfortunately the world does change and we have to change with it, and sometimes that direction to do something may well be coming from your leaders. So it's quite often a tough thing to do now and again, but unfortunately it's something we do have to do. So I think manager to leader, just accept sometimes it's going to be quite a massive learning curve. You might make some mistakes. You might look back and think, oh my goodness, why did I do it that way? And again, this is whether you've got your own business, you're working, I don't know, for a cause or a charity or another organisation. I think if people can see that you have got integrity, that you're good to your employees, whether it's in good times or bad, that you have respect for them, they will have respect for you. And even when delivering bad news, if you're open, you build that trust with them. I know sometimes we can't tell everyone everything, but being as open as you can and leaving that open door policy builds that trust. If you give them the opportunity to learn, and you're willing to learn, and you're willing not just to give feedback to your team, but also to receive feedback from your team in a very non-judgemental, constructive, evidence-based way, that's actually going to build respect with your team as well. We've talked about how it can be scary making this leap, that sometimes it is about leaving behind the tasks that are in your comfort zone, leaving those behind and really focusing on those softer skills of bringing teams together. That's kind of what leadership centres around, building that vision, getting the trust, getting the respect. And it's okay to ask for help. I can't, I haven't got enough toes, fingers and thumbs to count how many times I've been asked to come into organisations and help them with, well, we just need our new leaders to step up. Well, what do you mean by step up? We have to be clear about that. I get it, so I can help them through identifying what the struggle points are and giving them the help that they need. As we've talked about giving bad news, we've talked about actively listening to your teams. I've talked about feedback, I've mentioned that already. Metrics, making sure that your metrics and performance indicators are right, and constructing those goals and those metrics with your team as well. Letting go of the fact that you need to know everything and be a subject matter in everything. Forget it. You can't possibly be that, so allow people to show their expertise and employ people that have skill sets that you don't. You're there to lead. You're not necessarily there to do every single task. Don't worry if you're a young leader or somebody that's a bit more mature. It doesn't matter. You might have a team of all different ages, so let go of that old concept about just because you're senior you might you're going to be older, because that doesn't always happen in the organisations that I've seen. Don't feel like you need to know all the answers. If you don't know, tell people you don't know. Involve your team in getting answers to certain questions. Be open with them. Schedule time with your team. Make time for them. Eye contact, give them eye contact, open body language. Really think about what's the personal impact I want to make within 10 seconds of walking into a meeting or a room with my team. How do I want my team to feel about me? How can I build respect and trust without mimicking somebody else? And realising that to be a boss, there's loads and loads of different ways that you can be a boss. If you're introvert, you will find your own style. If you're extrovert, you will find your own style. If you're somewhere in between, you'll find your own style. There isn't a one size fits all, and it doesn't mean just because you're the boss that you have to be really, really strict with people and tell them off all the time. That's just not going to work. I've seen that, I've seen that really backfire where somebody's just dictatorial all the time. It's just not really a great place to be as a leader. So what else did I mention? I've talked about asking for help, making mistakes. Realise that making mistakes is sometimes par for the course. Have you got a role model? Is there somebody you could model yourself on? Not copy them, but are there facets of their behaviours and personalities that you really, really admire and you can borrow? Really work to neutralise that negative chatter. It's very easy, as I mentioned right at the beginning of leadership stage fright. It can be very lonely. It can be daunting. And it can lead us to that feeling of, I'm an imposter. How did I get this job? It can't possibly be because I'm really, really good at leading. Because maybe you've never led before. You will learn. Ask for help. Use some of the tips that I've talked about before. Define your style and you will learn how to lead. But don't be scared of doing your own research, of asking for help. But really focus on that mindset, because otherwise, as I mentioned before from that research that was conducted in Austria, if you let that imposter syndrome, that fear of I'm going to get found out, I'm not a good leader, I'm going to get found out, you'll see that people that do that don't get promoted as often, they don't get paid as much because they get stuck in this fear. So really neutralise that negative chatter, recognise your strengths and recognise where you may need to make some improvements along the way. Giving feedback on a regular basis to teams, and it's not like you've done this, two-way feedback, as I mentioned before. So that leap to leadership can be really scary if it is the first time that you've been put into that role. And I just want to reassure you that I've just coached so many people and teams around this notion of feeling like an imposter, of feeling scared about going into leadership, because it's like, I knew what to do when I was there, but I don't know what to do over here. But have a look at some of my videos on YouTube, listen to this video, get some tips, ask for some help, and really, more than anything, just try and neutralise that self-chatter. So, I'm going to be doing another Facebook Live next week, so watch out on my coaching page. I think next week it's something that's more on a personal career theme, I believe. But if there are particular subjects... Oh, hello, Liz. Nice to see you. Let me see if I can do a little wave. I'm just coming to the end now. Never mind. You can watch it on replay if you like. Before Coronation Street starts. But anyway, nice to see you, Liz. But yeah, if there are topics, themes that you would like me to cover, I'm happy to do it. I'm really happy to... cover whatever subjects I think I can. If I can't, I'll bring on a guest. So love the leap from manager to leader. Believe you've got there on your own merits. Follow the tips that I've talked about this evening to get you started, and by all means ask for help if it's the first time, whether it's a networking organisation, a charitable committee, your own business or an organisation. Really get that help that you need, and try to remember that you're not an imposter. You've got there because you're good at what you're doing. People have seen something in you, and now it's about really bottling that and conveying it to your team, and not thinking that you need to know all the answers and you have to do everything. Because today, honestly, the way that I see teams work today in today's business is it's not the leader always telling them what to do. Yes, sometimes there's a need for that more directive approach, but actually it's about inclusion, and it's about understanding that actually my ego as a leader, I need to leave it outside the office, and I need to include the rest of the team, bring them on board, because without our teams, we're nothing really, are we? So keep in touch. Feel free to write any comments below. Thank you for the thumbs up. Thank you to Liz, and thanks to Mithsat and the other people that have joined this evening. I've seen a few people hopping on and off. Feel free to suggest tips. Get in touch if you want to receive my... I do like a little news blast every Friday. It's about a 2-minute read on a key theme. What else have I got to say? Nothing really. Covered quite a lot of ground tonight, haven't we? But it's been lovely talking to you. This video is going to be on my Facebook page. Oh yes, by the way, I've got a private group on career coaching, personal career coaching. So I give you exclusive career tips about how to find what you love to do, how to improve your current career, and I do a lot around the positive mindset aspects of all of that, you know, which is useful for your career, but also other areas of your life. If you want to join that personal Facebook group, which is private, it's not on my page, then just drop me a direct message or just leave a comment after this video. But it's been lovely sharing this time with you. Thanks for joining, and I'll catch you next week. Okay, bye.